All right, so sometimes political party supporters are not always in favor of candidates who are selected for whatever reason to represent the party. And join us this morning, social commentator Sandra Roden. And I suspect we were talking about this because what we read recently about what happened
in a number of constituencies.
Yeah, but specifically with Dr. Dawes. But good morning, sir. Welcome.
Morning, sir.
But
Good morning.
It has happened many times and in many different areas on both parties. Is there a best way here to choose a candidate? Because again, there's ongoing argument in, as Delia said, in other areas, and the people say, no, we don't want that man, we want this lady, or we don't want this lady, we want that man. But is there a best way to do this?
That's a good question, and that comes back to this whole construct of democracy. We live in a, let me put in quotations, democracy, and the political parties should operate as such. But what's interesting about Jamaican politics, I've had my reads because I wasn't alive long enough, but I've read about the events of the past, and what you realize is that somewhere along the line, some individuals believe that democracy might not give you what you need, might give you what you want. So I might have to take an autocratic step when it comes on to the internal politics and selecting who I want to select. But it comes down really to the people. And it's interesting that many times we forego that whole construct of the people selecting who the people want, because you now look at a bigger picture. That's the argument that we're hearing now. There's a bigger picture that a particular party wants power, so they're selecting their best 11. You know, as a football coach, you get what I'm saying? You're selecting your best 11. You want your winger, you want your midfielder, and you say, this man can hold the middle away, somebody else can hold it. But then you question, if you are selecting your best 11, do you do it in disenfranchisement of the people who think that somebody else would be a better candidate for them? So are you selecting your government, or are you selecting the member of parliament for the people?
Yeah, but I think, Ms. Andre, part of the challenge is the members of parliament make up the government of the people. And so if a party is expected to, on winning or being in Jamaica House, to manage the affairs of the country, then if I'm a leader, I want to have a team that can manage the affairs of the country. So what's wrong with that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, that's a fair perspective. But look at it. We would have transitioned and added seats over the years. So now we're at 63, right? We would have had 60 before. We'd have a smaller number before, and now we're at 63. We have a wide array of seats. Now, in this specific case that has gotten public attention because there's public outcry, you question then, is it a case where he could have gone nowhere else? Is it a case where there are no other seats available? Because based on what was happening, it seems as though this councillor guy had already set his sights, you know, had his thing running. You know, I heard that flyers were all about the place for a long time. So is there a way then for you to balance it? Is there a way for you to say, okay, yes, I need my best 11, but do I need to make a sub here or there to kind of fix the cogs in place? I don't think it would have been impossible, noting that the opposition would have to overturn quite an array of seats, and they would. And the reason why I think they'd go for this specific one is because they'd have had it over the years. It's them trying to say, these are seats that we know we can win, we think are winnable, so I'm kind of putting persons who I need in these seats. But they have many of those seats. So the question I really had was, is it a case where you couldn't have found another place where you also balance what the people want and balance what you need as the leader?
I'm certainly will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in answering your first question, you kind of were suggesting that kind of make the people choose type of thing. I think that's what you were suggesting. But is, you know, running a problem that, you know, two man way like Delia, two man way like Devil, two man way like Sandre, and you have all kinds of problems. And I think what Delia was suggesting is that the leader must look and say, no, but Sandra is the best person for this seat for whatever reason. Hopefully because when we're going to government, you will be the ideal person. You don't run into a problem if you leave it up to the people.
You do and you don't. And it's a flip side of a coin. I was thinking about it this morning on my way saying, if I was leader, probably I go on, put in a man, But then you think about it, and you in Jamaican politics, think about every single way it went wrong. Let's go in St. Anne, where there was a Jamaica Labour Party candidate put in a particular seat, and then what did we see last year? Protests, right? They didn't get to select their candidate, and a candidate was selected for them. They said, listen, this is the person we're going with. They had a united front with their candidate selection. Let's look at another seat in St. Anne where a prominent PNP figure is. Yeah. Over the years, voter turnout decreased for that particular person because they're saying, it's a case where they believe she should not have been the one. But if it's a case, what's the beauty about democracy is that you say, listen, majority counts. So if most people choose you, then fine. Now, if it's a case that you have this prominent figure, prominent public figure, as many would say, that you believe is a winnable case, you go in, you create that space, you let them go through the democratic process. Now, if the people want them, they'll select them. If you sell to the people why this is a person that we need for the government and the people buy it, I think it would be a simple sell, because we've seen over the years where some have worked. Mm-hmm. We've seen at the Minister of Finance. I don't know if
it's simple, so, because I find...
Maybe I'm saying it's a little bit too simple.
Yeah, because I find that, theoretically, sometimes those things work, but I find that sometimes when people are just loyal to who they're loyal to, they're just loyal to who they're loyal to. Yep. And it doesn't matter if I come with a whole slew of pros and cons. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to say, I'm in a business, I never me love, and I never me want. Mm. So I find, it's something I said with Neville and Garth yesterday, that whilst we continue to advocate democracy, with democracy also comes maturity and responsibility, and a kind of thinking that I don't know if all of our people have. We have to work on that, me think.
Right, I don't disagree with you at all.
Yeah.
But with that maturity, you still have to question, how do we not get to a space where they're firebombing an office?
Right.
So if it's a case where I am selecting a person to go in because I know what I'd want. As I said, to form government, I know that probably I'm going to need this doctor man to be my Minister of Health because I like what he's doing in his own profession. I think he'd be a good fit for the country. Now, how do you ensure that you communicate this properly, that people understand what's happening? Because what we've seen now is that they've moved away from the normal processes, as we see, proper long-term campaigning, long-term election type of thing. They said, listen, we're doing polling to see if you are a winnable candidate. It makes sense, from a theoretical and academic point of view. If I put in a poll, I'm saying, voters, you got to select the man here, select the man, and they say, this is the best man.
Right.
It makes sense, right? It makes sense. It's a viable option to select. But then you still have to wonder about the people, because if you disenfranchise, it may be a small section, we don't know, because you see people protesting, we say 20 people protesting, we don't see the entire seat of protest.
We don't see the whole constituency.
You don't see the whole constituency. Right. So it may be mischief. It may be mischief. Or loyalty. So at the end of the day, it has to be a case where a conversation would have been had with the people. I think that's where you go wrong. In politics, communication is a lot of times where you go wrong. So if this process, even if you are going to select this person, how do you still ensure that the people feel like they have a say in the matter? How do you assure them that, listen, this is still for your best interest? Because that's what they feel. They feel that it's not for my best interest.
Sorry, Neville. Because we have situations too where there are people in constituencies that people say, okay, them can retire now. No shade against them. They're great members of parliament. They've done their job, but they're at the age that they should be exiting. But the people love them and still vote for them. But then you find that the government can't use them in the ways that they wish they could, and can't push them out for putting a body. So I find, Sandra,
But that's the maturity, you know, that's what they spoke about, the power of that veto power of the leader to say, listen, it's time to make some sense. Because I agree with it, yes, you can love it, but if you're going in the departure lounge, I forgot the part. So, you know, as you say, I think it's a balanced game between how you use that power, but most importantly, how you communicate with the people and how you use that power, because it really comes down to the people. So even if in democracy you have to make some decisions for the needs of the people and not exactly what they want, you still have to communicate that so we don't feel disenfranchised from something like a SOE, because we believe that it's fighting crime. So you have to communicate that to us so we understand what's happening.
We've all said a lot of stuff so far. You're the leader of both parties. You're in charge of the two of them. How would you choose a candidate?
How would I choose a candidate? I believe that I would select at least the best three, right? And I would send them to the people. And if I have a particular choice, I am going to speak to them, and I'm going to let all these candidates know that they're campaigning for the particular space. But the beauty about it is that we have Senate and we have members of Parliament. So if the people select the candidate that I want, fine. But if I can get 4 ministers from the Senate, so I'd get some of those people in the Senate, but others, I believe, would have been there in space, and people will choose. But there are also seats where you know that you can go in as leader and get your person in. But I believe, firstly, you have to bring the persons to the people and see how best they're accepted before you make a decision that you might consider as political suicide.
All right, thanks for coming.
All right.
By the way, no matter what happens, to burn people, place, and don't make sense.
Yeah, never.
You could have hate the man like poison. There are ways to do things and to...
Unacceptable.
Yeah, that can't work. That can't work. All right. Thanks again, Sandre.
Social commentator Sandre Roden. Coming up next, climate change. How are we for a pending disaster? Are we ready? We soon come.